Right on, welcome. Just to be in this moment right now, it's pretty incredible. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tania Browning, City Councilor of the City of Central Point and the League of Oregon Cities President this year. Woohoo! Welcome to the League's 97th annual conference here in beautiful Central Oregon and the great city of Bend. Woohoo! Thank you, Ben. All right, today we'll have colors being presented by Oregon Youth Challenge Program, and performing our national anthem this afternoon is Naomi Bennett. Naomi is 14 years old and has been singing in Central Oregon Choir for almost a decade. She lives in Sisters with her family and animals and plans to travel internationally with the Youth Choir of Central Oregon. Next year, they'll be performing in Spain and Paris. So now if you all will please rise, we will present the colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. The Oregon Youth Challenge Program was established in 1999 here in Bend by the Oregon National Guard as an intervention program to reclaim the lives of teens who have dropped out of high school and were not tracking to graduate. The program incorporates best practices in positive youth development, a combination of educational and military models. It helps at-risk students or youth rather, enter their high school, get their diploma, equivalency, or credit recovery towards graduation. To date, the Oregon Youth Challenge has graduated 5,400 cadets from the state. To learn more about their program, they do have a booth just outside near the entrance. The Youth Choir of Central Oregon is celebrating its 33rd season as the region's premier extracurricular choral program. Its primary goal is to provide opportunity for musical expression and present development opportunities and joyful environments. So thank you both to Naomi and the Color Guard. It is now my pleasure to welcome to this stage the host this year here in the beautiful city of Bend, Gina Goodman-Campbell.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Welcome to Central Oregon. And thanks once more to Naomi and our other young people here helping us honor the flag. I always get goosebumps with the national anthem, but especially when it's a strong young woman singing. So thank you again. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the beautiful land known as Bend, Oregon, north to the Columbia River, is the original homelands of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The Confederated Tribes ceded this land in the Treaty of 1855 while retaining regular and customary hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. The Warm Springs, Wasco, and Northern Paiute people inhabited this area in certain seasonal times that clearly established their presence. It is also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds. This trade route expanded the impact of commerce between tribal nations. We acknowledge the original stewards of this land and thank them. It is our hope that guests continue to honor and care for this land. So the cities of Central Oregon are honored to host the League of Oregon Cities 97th Annual Conference. And after a 2-year pause, we are so excited to welcome city officials and you all from across our state to our region for an in-person meeting finally. This conference, the largest of its kind in Oregon, presents an unmatched opportunity to learn from each other, to discuss ideas, ask questions, and share things that are working or not working in our cities. So I encourage you all to spend some time enjoying the wonders that our region has to offer. Just from talking to folks in the audience so far, it sounds like lots of you already are. Whether you choose to stroll along the river right outside the river house here, or sample some local beverages and cuisine, or do a little shopping in our local businesses, Central Oregon offers really countless options for making your stay here really more memorable and more enjoyable. So we are delighted to host you. Thank you for being here and enjoy your time.
All right, great. Thank you, Gina, Mayor Goodman-Campbell. It's fantastic to be here in the city. So excited to be here. I was chatting with a colleague of mine, and we were discussing business success and what that looked like, and what I wanted from my business and what I wanted from my business. And we started thinking about what that question really meant. You know, what does it mean when you're talking about business? Yes, we'd love to have a positive P&L report. We want to have happy customers, happy clients, but really the thing that I look for is I want happy employees. I want people loving what they do and sharing what they do with other people. And so that started the conversation, and really business isn't any different than building communities, right? It's all about the relationships, and nothing is more important than the way we treat each other. My assumption is if you're in this room, you believe that. You're not here for the P&L or the paycheck. You're here because you want to build great people, because we know that great people build incredible communities, and that's what we're here trying to figure out how to do in the best way. So it has been my distinct privilege to serve the League of Oregon Cities and travel to all of your incredible communities. I really have enjoyed visiting all of those spaces and listening to the things that matter the most to you. we've been listening, we've been building the strategic plan, we've had lots of meetings in your cities because we want to deliver to you, our customer, the best community building tools that we have. So the League has been working diligently on that alongside staff and our consultant. We have completed our strategic plan, which will inform how we move forward. But we have been gathering this information at the regional meetings, conversations, and probably more surveys than anyone wanted. But thank you for participating in that. It helps us gather that data. So that will also help inform our recruitment process for a permanent executive director that should commence at the end of this year. So that will help inform the data-driven decisions that we will be making as we move forward into 2025 into our 100th year of service to this state. So thank you for participating in that. Thank you for being here. I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank the interim executive director, Patty Mulvihill, and her patience. Thank you, Patty, for stepping up. Incredible. She has incredible patience and her overall awesomeness in being my road dog this last year. There has been a lot of spinach and a lot of chocolate cake that we have had when we've traveled throughout the state. So she has this gift that allows her to perfectly weave together the legal components, the logistical components, and the logical matters that are really facing our community and provide that in a way that's meaningful and understandable to our cities. So I always know that I'm getting the best information when I speak with her or staff. And so please join me again in thanking her and staff, all of you for participating, whether you're elected or appointed. We have continued to show up as elected officials, and we have played nice, both here at our state capitol, nationally, and that's what our communities deserve. They deserve elected officials that can be role models, that show respect to one another, even in the most heated of issues that impact our communities. Over the last 10 months, I have witnessed and been inspired time and time again as I go to these different communities, and I have watched respectful dialogue around very passionate issues. That's the reason I got involved in service, is I wanted to serve my community. I wanted to be useful, and I wanted to affect change and show others that they could do that same thing. So I can't wait for you all to connect with all the offerings that are here for the rest of this week at the conference. Please join your fellows in the trainings, the networking, celebrating milestones. There's lots of fun to be had while we're gaining all of this information. Together we are stronger. We have so much to offer one another to learn from each other and move forward. So I think I've covered all of the notes that I was told that I had to, but I do really want to emphasize, I'm going totally off script now, about the fun that can be had while we are productive and useful. So now I will introduce our interim executive director of the League of Oregon Cities, Patty Mulvihill.
Good afternoon, everybody. As President Browning mentioned, I'm Patty Mulvihill, the Interim Executive Director. I don't know if the President caught it, but a lot of you were chuckling when she suggested that you were not in this for the paycheck. I will say there might be 20 staff persons in the room who are slightly in it for the paycheck. Not that we don't believe in the mission, but also the paycheck helps. So I'm going to flip to my remarks. Most of them are kind of some housekeeping stuff, but a little bit to begin with. I really want to thank Mayor Gina Goodman Campbell for welcoming us to Bend and for her city who played host. For those of you who haven't ever really worked with our conference planning committee, the host city, they provide a lot of staff support and they do a lot of integral work to make this conference a success. It's not just helping us with the venue, it's helping us with educational content and helping us with tours. So on behalf of the entire organization, Mayor, I'd really like to thank you and your entire staff for helping us put forward a really exceptional conference. And the mayor was kind enough to mention that we are here in Central Oregon, and so it wasn't just the city of Bend who helped us plan this conference, it was other surrounding cities, Redmond, Sisters, Prineville, this is where I go off script, Madras and La Pine. All of those cities participated in bringing this conference together and providing us useful content. I also need to thank the Board of Directors. If you are a member of our Board of Directors, could you please stand and be recognized by your peers? When I joined the league, the Board of Directors didn't play as heavy as a role in conference programming as they currently play this year. They've helped us with educational content, they're working with us on tours, and they're serving as session hosts for all of our breakout sessions today. So they have been an integral part of this conference and its success. Some of the driving factors in the success of this conference are your LOC staff. If we have any staff in the room, can you stand or wave your hands if you already are standing in the back? Most of them are covering back there. Now sit down real quickly because I'm going to tell everybody to find you if they have questions or concerns. We're here to assist you, so if you have any questions about where you're supposed to go or if you need to be registered for something, about tickets to dinner, please just make sure you ask any staff person and all of us can assist you. Speaking of asking questions, you may have noticed when you registered this morning that there's an Ask LOC booth downstairs. That booth is going to be staffed consistently during the conference by LOC staff persons, board members, committee and caucus executive leaders, as well as a representative from the National League of City. You can go down there and you can ask any questions. You can pick up information about committees, future trainings, and additional resources. So please make sure that you stop by at some point during the visit so that you can check it out. If you're going down to the Ask LOC booth, you'll walk past 48 vendor booths downstairs. There's an additional 13 vendor booths on this particular floor. In addition to those 61 vendors, we also have 52 separate conference sponsors today. Each of them have provided support in some form or manner that have made this conference a success, and their financial contributions and support help us keep the conference very affordable. I've got two key logistical stuff I have to cover before I turn it over to today's sponsors. First of all, I hope everybody is going to stay through all of Friday so that you will all participate in the annual membership meeting. It's not boring. You should definitely stay. During that meeting, you will elect your 2023 Board of Directors. If you have not already done so, your city is supposed to give staff a name of who your voting delegate is. If you haven't submitted your voting delegate name, or if you don't know if your city has supported a voting delegate name so far, please stop by registration and check with staff. We need that voting delegate's name by Friday morning so that your city can participate fully in the election. The last thing I want to highlight is in about 6 to 8 weeks, the league will open applications for its various committees. We have 15 different committees in this organization. They serve to provide information, resources, and support to the Board of Directors, as well as to LOC staff. In some of our larger general session rooms, you're going to see tents on the tables. They'll have a QR code. If you scan that QR code, it will give you information on all of our committees. If any of them seem interesting to you, you can click on a button, and we will send you information when those committee applications go live. So if you're interested in getting more involved in the organization, that's one of the best ways to do so. Now I'll transition to one of our key sponsors today. It's my pleasure to introduce today's sponsor for our keynote address. It is being generously sponsored by McDonald Miller Facility Solutions. For those of you who are not familiar with the company, McDonald Miller Facility Solutions is a full-service design-build mechanical contractor located here in the Pacific Northwest. The company employs over 1,000 professionals in 11 different locations, all of whom work to help cities develop and construct buildings that operate in the most efficient way possible. McDonald Miller Facility Solutions builds and maintains mechanical systems that provide safe, healthy, and energy-efficient structures. The company was recently awarded the design-build mechanical contract for the Clackamas County Courthouse in Oregon City. At this time, please join me in welcoming to the stage the Vice President of Building Performance for McDonald Miller Facility Solutions, Mr. Perry England, today's sponsor of the keynote address.
Well, I'd say there's one thing that Executive Director Mulvihill and I have in common. We use paper notes. So the second one of the day. So thank you very much for the kind remarks. So she gave away a little bit of my opening remarks, but I suspect there's still others in the room that are wondering who is McDonald Miller. This is our first time here to sponsor the event, so we're very excited about that. But I will tell you one thing that McDonald Miller is not. We're not that company that makes those airplanes up north. So that's one thing we're not. And then for those that don't know, McDonald Miller is over 1,400 people strong. We have over 400 employees here in Oregon. And we're all about making your buildings work better, right? So it's your building, and we have the professional staff that works with your staff to make your buildings run efficiently and more comfortably. Whether your goal is to reduce your carbon footprint or simply improve operational efficiencies, by partnering with McDonald Miller, your buildings will be more efficient, healthier, and more comfortable for your staff and your constituents. And for those who have taken the time to read our keynote speaker's book, you can see I'm a good reader. I like to mark my little pages here. And this is his most recent book, The Palaces for the People. Providing a healthier, more resilient built environment for your community makes it inviting for all to benefit from his insightful work. We are pleased to be a sponsor of this year's conference and to support the incredible work that each one of you and your teams do in service to your community. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. The future of cities and democratic societies rests not only on shared values, but on social infrastructure, the libraries, parks, and civic organizations where crucial connections are formed. And then with that, what is social infrastructure? I'm reading his notes right here, by the way. To Eric Klinenberg, it is the physical places and organizations that shape the way people interact. As he outlines in his timely book, Palaces for the People, there is an expansive historical context for this necessary contemporary reconstruction of our shared spaces. This includes libraries, parks, churches, and schools, all the places where strangers and familiars alike mingle across paths. A professor of sociology and director of the Institute for Public Knowledge at the New York University, Eric's unique research sheds light on democratic, social, and environmental transformations. Eric has written for The Guardian, the New York Times Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal, among others. He earned his bachelor's degree at Brown University and his master's degree and PhD from University of California, Berkeley. So you got some California genes in you. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Dr. Eric Klinenberg.
All right. We've been having some technical sound issues. How does that sound okay? Feedback's not bad? I mean, it's nice to be together face to face, right? But there were a couple good things about Zoom. You know, you never had that noise thing that screeched in your ear with the microphone on Zoom. That's about it, actually. I think that's the only thing that was good about Zoom. It's so nice to see each other. Isn't it great to be here face to face? Yeah, it's amazing. Actually, I'm looking out at the crowd, I'm guessing not a lot of you know that today happens to be Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Any really observant Jews out here, by the way? No, of course there's none, because they are all praying right now. The worst thing you can do if you're Jewish is do exactly what I'm doing right now, standing on the stage. And there's actually, it's the holiest day of the year. According to the Jewish religion, this is the day when God decides whether your name is entered into the book of life. So like the stakes of screwing this up are very high. And famously so, perhaps the greatest pitcher in the history of the Jewish people, Sandy Koufax. Yeah? You know Sandy Koufax? It's not a very long list of great Jewish pitchers, but he's at the top of them. And no, here's how high the bar is for what you should do on Yom Kippur. He was slated to pitch in the World Series with the Dodgers, and he refused to play on Yom Kippur. And every Jewish kid in America learns this story when they're growing up. It's our parents' way of making sure we go to synagogue. So when I got the call asking if I would come to speak at your convention, I was a little nervous about it. Well, I mean, to be totally honest, the default setting on the Google Calendar doesn't have Yom Kippur in it. And, you know, so I said, yes, sounds great. And then, like, I heard some rumbling in the distance, and there was a voice out. Now, I figured it out, and I had a little bit of a crisis. And my wife said, well, what's the event? And I was like, oh, it's Oregon, it's the League of Cities. She said, that sounds pretty good, but is it like Sandy Koufax World Series level? And I was like, I don't know. I got to read up on them a little bit. And she used to live in Portland, and she was like, oh, well, where exactly is it? And I said, it's in Bend. And she said, oh, you got to go. And why? Like, what's so great about Bend? She said, you have to go to Deschutes. I was like, no, she's like, the brewery. You have to go to Deschutes and get a beer. So that's why I'm here, everybody. I'm here because of, and let's be honest, the mayor's gone. That's the reason you're here too. So I used to travel all the time, actually. Do you mind if I just tell a story? Do you mind a story? I mean, we're going to talk about social infrastructure and libraries and parks and all that stuff. But we had to wait a long time to get to this conference, right? So can we start with a story? Because you know what? Like, being together and sharing stories, like, that's kind of what it's all about. You know what I mean? We missed that, I think, over the last couple of years, right? Like, we had stories, we all had TVs, we had social media, but something about sharing stories with each other that's like a very profoundly human thing. So I just want to share a story with you, and then I'll talk about what I came here to talk about. And if you listen to the story, you might even notice that there's some themes that are relevant too. So I used to travel all the time. And as I told you with the whole Deschutes story, I'm married. And anybody else here married, by the way? Any of you married people? Okay. Children? Anyone have children? Okay. So they're the people who are the happiest to be at this conference. Yeah. So I used to travel all the time. And there was one time, like, when this Palaces for the People book first came out, I was really traveling a ton. Week, 10 days, big book tour, Europe, United States. And bless my wife, she's a wonderful person. And we had 2 young kids, slightly older now, but at the time there was a lot of work to take care of them. And she was always very gracious and lovely about, like, I'd go on the book tour. And she's got a full-time job. She's a professor, she's a writer, busy person, but she was always very supportive. But I always remember this one day I came home from a big book tour, and I got in on Saturday night and this Sunday morning, and I was like, 7 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning, and she woke up and she said, Eric, I'm so happy you went on the tour, and it's so great that you're home. I'm going out with my friend, then we're going for drinks. I'll be home around 8 o'clock, bye. And she just closed the door. Yeah, she was gone. And for those of you who raise your hand on the whole parents thing, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, but it's Sunday morning, it's like 7 or 7:30, and your spouse is not coming home for 12 or 13 hours, right? And you got no plans, right? You got to figure out what to do. Does that happen to anybody here? You can relate that? So it's like, oh my God, 13 hours, I've been on the road, I lost some of my parenting chops. Now, my son was about 13 years old at the time, and to be honest, maybe 12, he couldn't really care less. He loves soccer. All he wants to do is play soccer. He's going to do stuff with his friends. And so he was like, oh, whatever, Dad, do what you want. It was great. Now it's down to one-on-one. And but my daughter was about 8, and she was at that age where she still actually liked hanging out with me, and she wanted to talk, and do stuff and have activities. And so I had to come up with something for her. And it turns out, like just the night before, I had read this article in the New York Times about this new store that had just opened up in New York City. It was causing a big sensation, big lines. I don't know if you have it here. It's called the Amazon 4-star store. Do you have the 4-star store where you live? Do you know about it? Oh, some of you know. Okay, well, Seattle's like, yeah, of course. They have it on every block in Seattle. Here's the 4-star store idea. It's Amazon, but they have an actual store. And why is it called the 4-star store? Because everything in the store got 4 stars or more from Amazon customers, right? So you know it's going to be awesome, right? Everything's going to be amazing. And I read about it. It seemed like a big deal, and I knew like my daughter wanted to go. And I thought that was a good idea. But I also felt like I should mix it up a little bit, and I came up with this great idea for a social experiment. And, well, don't judge me about that. I mean, I'm, you know? I mean, if you're a sociologist and you're going to have kids, you might as well do social experiments on them, right? I mean, what other good are kids? No, never mind. I've been touring this book where I talk about the public life of cities and shared spaces, a thing I call social infrastructure. Those of you who are really worried you're not getting enough educational content from this talk, we're going to get there, okay? So I was like, I came up with this idea, and what we do is we would go first to the Amazon 4-star store, and then we would go to my kind of favorite social infrastructure, the public library, and we'd do like a compare and contrast kind of thing and like evaluate them. Please don't judge me. I see already, you're all judging me. Stop it. It's a really good idea, okay? So she was up for it, and we walked down to the Amazon 4-star store, and there was a crowd there. Not like too big a crowd, just like it was buzzing with activity, and it was just like a generally kind of positive place, like music on, and we started looking around. They had amazing things like they had a talking Chewbacca doll. Do you remember Chewbacca? You remember Chewbacca, right? And they had, I always mess this up. They had the vacuum cleaner that you don't, like, it just floats with the Roomba, right? The Roomba, they had anybody here have a Roomba? It's cool, right? It flies around the store, and people were really happy. We spent about 45 minutes there, and at the end of the 45 minutes, I was tallying it up. She asked me for about $1,300 of stuff. And, right? And, okay, so I said I was going to do a social experiment. I didn't tell you everything. I decided to tweak the social experiment in a certain direction, and so I had decided in advance that I was actually not going to buy her anything because I thought that would like set her up. Stop judging me. I'm a visitor here. I was going to set her up for liking the public library, and so I'm just putting all my cards on the table, okay? It's Yom Kippur. I got to get in the book of life somehow. So she got very upset about it, okay? So maybe slightly more upset than I had just calculated, but she was not happy about the situation, and it was a bit of a problem, but there was actually a lesson in here, okay? And the lesson is, when you go through life in a consumer society, you feel like you want things, like the experience of going to these places makes you want stuff all the time. And the truth is that even if I had bought her the talking Chewbacca, it wouldn't have been enough, and half an hour afterwards, she would have wanted more, right? And I wanted her to understand that when you live in a society where the best things that you can do are go to, I'm not picking on Amazon here, 4-star store is an awesome idea, but like when you live in a society where the thing you're supposed to do to have fun is go shopping, the way our cities are set up these days, like they're entertainment, consumer paradises, you'll oftentimes feel unsatisfied at the end of the day. There's never the point where you're like, I've got everything I could ever have wanted. I never need to go shopping again, right? No parent ever has heard that, right? And I kind of want her, okay, you know where I'm coming from? I haven't spent a ton of time in Oregon, but I'm guessing the feel in a lot of cities in Oregon is like similar. You know, there's a lot of shopping to do. But that was okay. We got through that, and I bought her ice cream, okay? She was yeah, thank you. For those of you who are ready to walk out of the room, I put her in it, but I was priming her, right? I was putting her in a good mood so we could go to the library. And so we start walking over to the library. And the library is in a part of New York City called the Lower East Side. I don't know if anyone's been to the Lower East Side. It's a famous part of New York City. It's famous for being a very heavily immigrant neighborhood. It's had a lot of tenement housing. Jews were there for a while. Now it's more Asian American, a lot of Chinese people, Latinx people, traditionally very diverse. Now it's become, the word we use in New York City is becoming very gentrified. Is that an issue here in Oregon City as well, gentrification? You know that word? I know you know that word, right? Yeah. Lower East Side is like if you're the kind of person who wakes up in the morning and you think to yourself, like, where could I find a $12 ice cream cone, you know, in a place where the only flavor is salt? That you go to the Lower East Side of New York City, right? It's got that feel. So we were walking through there, and it's this kind of cool neighborhood. And right in the middle of the Lower East Side, there is a thing called Seward Park. And Seward Park is a special place. It's the oldest municipal playground in the United States. First city playground. Very cool. Like a lot of people living in a tight space, and the kind of city set it up. The public sector set up like a play space. And then embedded inside of this park and playground, there is an extraordinary library. It's a Carnegie library. You know about Andrew Carnegie? For those of you who don't know, he was like Bill Gates, but 100 years ago, right? And Carnegie was a big magnate, I mean, kind of uneven record as a human being. He was a strikebreaker. He was very much against the income tax. He lived in these giant, mansions, but he was an incredible philanthropist, and he gave the equivalent of like $2.5 billion of contemporary money to build libraries. He helped to build 2,500 libraries or so around the world. And the deal he would set up with cities is like he would build the library. He'd give them the money. There was a design. He would get the thing built, and then he'd hand it over to the government, and the local government would have to take over all the rest of it. And so this is public-private partnership, and the Carnegie Classic Libraries are really special places. There's a diverse set of styles, but the classic style is actually kind of like the stage here. You have to go, like if you're at street level, you have to go up a set of stairs to get to the entrance, like maybe 4 or 5 stairs, and it physically has the effect of exalting you. Like the notion is, when you go into a library, a public library, you're being lifted from the profane everyday world, and you're going to a special place. And the classic Carnegie libraries have high ceilings and big windows, and they have this kind of generosity of spirit, right? And so the notion is, like, Carnegie was a Scottish immigrant, and he felt like there weren't enough places that gave people a sense that they could make something better of themselves, and that the world was set up for them to improve, do better. And he really wanted the library to be that kind of place. And so the Seward Park Library is a gorgeous building. I was so excited to walk my daughter in there. And of course, right after the Amazon thing, the plan was, no matter what she asked me for at the library, you doing okay? No matter what she asked me for at the library, the answer for anything she wanted was going to be, yeah, that's how generous I am. So we start walking towards the library, and we get like, 30 yards from the front, and I realize that my plan is toast. And the reason is, in this little park that the library is embedded in, there's a giant gate. And on the gate are 2 enormous padlocks. It's locked. And I say to my daughter, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. It looks like the library's closed. 8 years old. Without missing a beat, she turns to me and she says, "Dad, everybody knows the library is closed on Sunday." and you know, there's like a point in everyone's life where they realize their kid's smarter than they are. And 8 is early. But it happened. And it was a weird thing that I had done because I'd actually just spent the year before basically going to public libraries every day as part of the field work for this Palaces for the People book, which I'm sure most of you have already ordered on your Amazon app. And I couldn't figure out why I had done it, and I just had to figure out how to salvage the moment. So I said, "Oh, you know, you're right. You know, do you have any idea why the library is closed on Sunday?" Right? Do you have any idea why? Because as you can tell from my presence here, I'm not an especially religious person, you know, but I have read the Old Testament, and I can tell you, at least in the versions that we have in my family, there's not a line that's like, and on the 5th day God said, "Thou shalt close the library on Sunday." Like that, right? That line doesn't exist. In fact, for most of the 20th century, the library's busiest day of the week was Sunday. Right? And why is that? Because Sunday was the day when a lot of people don't go to work. There are a lot of dads out there with 2 kids who need something to do, right? For 12 or 13 hours. And what an amazing place a library should be as a resource for a family. You can come in, right? You've got rooms that provide different kinds of things for different people. You can do all kinds of activities. So the library historically has been at its busiest on Sunday. So why is it that the library is closed in New York City on Sunday? Does anyone know? Anyone know? Work for city government here? Why would you close the libraries on Sunday? Funding. Thank you very much. Funding. Because we cut the budget for the library system. Because we started to think, you know what, a library is a luxury good. You want to have a good city, do whatever you can to get an Amazon 4-star store there. If we have money for the library, great, but if not, it's no big deal. We'll just gate it up. I'm here today to tell you that I think this is a problem, right? And I want to explain why. It's a problem because the library is kind of like the quintessential thing that I call social infrastructure. And you got a description in the intro, but I'm going to tell you what I mean by social infrastructure one more time because it doesn't just roll off your tongue. When I say social infrastructure, what I'm referring to are the set of physical places, it could be organizations too, but physical places that shape our interactions, right? And the argument I make in my work is that when we invest in social infrastructure, when we design it well, when we build it well, when we maintain it well, when we program it, we get all kinds of returns to our public life. And when we don't think about social infrastructure, we don't even recognize that we've got it. When we don't prioritize it, when we design and build and maintain, invest, we start to fill up our world with Amazon stores, and we start to kind of hunker down at home with our screens. Can I give you an example other than the library? I want to give you an example of social infrastructure. Playgrounds. Anybody here have a playground in their town? Can you raise your hand if you had a playground in their town? I'm just curious. Okay. Let's just take the state of Oregon here. Here's my question for you. Think about, say, like the last 100 years in Oregon. Okay. How many relationships do you think exist? Like support networks, friendships, communities. How many relationships exist because two families went to the same swing set often enough that at some point somebody put their phone down and started a conversation? And at one point there was something they had to run and do, and they'd been pushing the swings long enough next to that person who's always there, and they said, hey, do you mind if I go run and change my baby's diaper? Would you just look after my kid for a second? And they say, sure, no problem. And then everybody keeps talking, and you decide to go sit out and have a little picnic afterwards. And then one day you wind up inviting each other over, and you have like a little get together, and you're introduced to their friends, and they're introduced to your friends. And the next thing you know, this kind of thing that like a relationship support system builds into something. And we have that thing that we're all talking, we're here because we care about good communities, right? I think I heard that in the beginning. That's what we're all about here. How, just throw out a number for me, how many relationships do you think exist in the state of Oregon over the last century because two families met at a playground and things went from there? 12? Did you say 12 relationships? 5? 12? 120? Hundreds of thousands, what'd you say? 100 million. Okay, there's no right answer to this question. That is probably the dumbest question that's ever been asked in this place, right? That's a horrible question. If I were a professor at Oregon State University, you should fire me for asking that question. It's an unanswerable question, right? No one knows. But in our hearts, we know that it's more than a few 100,000. And we're kind of like trying to figure out how many millions it is, right? It's a huge number. And just because it's Yom Kippur, I'm going to go back to Genesis. There's nothing there that says on the third day God created the playground, right? Maybe you all use a different version than I do. I don't know, but it's like the point I'm making is a playground. We did not get given the playground by God. You know, this wasn't like the Garden of Eden and a playground next door. We came up with the idea that we should have playgrounds. We should have special places where families can be together, where kids can play, the parents can get a little bit of relief. It'll help build relationships. Hey, maybe cities should build them. Maybe they should design them well, maintain them, take care of them. I grew up in the city of Chicago. I apologize to all of you for that. It happens when we get together. And I don't know what your Chicago is like, but like in the 70s and 80s in Chicago, so I inherited a lot of good social infrastructure because in the decades before I was born, the city of Chicago was on this ambitious building project. They built new public housing, they built new public parks, they built libraries, they built playground, all kinds of stuff. But a little bit before I was born, the city hit really hard economic times. The industrial jobs started to disappear, factories closed down, the tax base diminished, people left, neighborhoods got abandoned. The city said, we got to figure out how to make the model work, and the model was, let's cut the taxes to get more Amazon 4-star stores, and we don't have to take care of the playgrounds. So the playgrounds, when I was growing up, and I don't know about you, but like you avoided the playground in my neighborhood because the swing was falling apart, there was glass all over the surface of the thing, the bad kids were hanging out there, like the older teenagers. Like we all stayed away from the playground. And there was a price for that. But in a lot of communities, they built up stuff like that. In fact, a lot of people in my family, not my family, but my cousins, they all moved to the suburbs. And in the suburbs outside of Chicago, they had amazing playgrounds and beautiful athletic fields, right? They had all these incredible social infrastructures. We didn't really have it that much in the city. So it's not enough just to have it there. You actually have to make sure you keep it updated and you keep investing in it. And you know when you go to a city and it cares about social infrastructure, you can see it as soon as you see. Whenever I go to a city, I did this in Bend. I walk to the library, I go to find a playground, I find an athletic field, I go to the parks, I want to see what they're doing, right? And you can tell a lot. What do we value here, right? I don't want to know how many Starbucks there are. I don't mean to pick on Seattle, but I thought it's Oregon, so if I picked on Seattle, it would go over well. And then I found out the guys who are sponsoring the lecture do business in Seattle, so I totally screwed this up. I'm very sorry. I love Seattle. Congratulations on the Mariners, right? It's a big deal. As a Cubs fan, I can tell you, it's a really big deal. So you just see it, and let me tell you, it's not just about like where you're going to take your kid on a Sunday. Okay, it's more serious than that. The way that I learned about social infrastructure, actually, the way I started thinking about it is that I was in graduate school, and I started to do research on what was my dissertation, which would then become my first book, called Heat Wave, which is also available on the Amazon app. Just I want to give them some love, I'm here to help them out. So there was a big heat wave that hit Chicago in 1995, and ordinarily I wouldn't think this would make any sense to you, except for I did like 25 interviews last year on the Oregon heat dome, so I know that you now know more about heat than you ever wanted to, right? And you know that you could feel like, oh, I don't have to worry about that kind of thing, and then suddenly you find that you're in a dome and you're not getting out, right? It was horrible what happened last year, and this year too was not that much better. So there was a big heat wave that hit Chicago in 1995, and hundreds of people, more than 700 people, died in just a couple of days, seemingly out of nowhere. And I wanted to understand what happened. I was just starting to learn sociology. Is this annoying for you? Because I could switch to another mic. Is it okay? I feel myself going in and out. Are you okay? It's okay? But okay, I mean, I can use the mic, and I will use the mic. I'm just gonna switch. You want to turn it off? I can use this mic, but is that better? Is that better? But now you don't get to see me move around and stuff. So, all right, I'll try to contain myself. So I wanted to understand what happened, and when you're learning sociology, one of the first things you learn how to do is draw a map. I was doing urban sociology. I wanted to draw a map. So I drew this map of the neighborhoods in Chicago. I wanted to see who died and where they died and try to figure out why. And when I first drew the map, it looked like the most uninteresting map in the history of maps. What I saw is that the neighborhoods that got hit really hard in this heat disaster were on the south side and the west side of the city. And these are places that are kind of famously called the Black Belt in Chicago. Chicago is a very segregated city, and these are the neighborhoods that are disproportionately poor, vulnerable. They rank low on a whole bunch of health outcomes for reasons that have nothing to do with like race as a physical thing, but have to do with racial discrimination and racial violence in the history of Chicago, forcibly, pushing the black population into a small set of neighborhoods which then got neglected. And it was politically very important to note that these are the neighborhoods that were hit hardest during the disaster, right? Because it raises the question like, well, if you know that those neighborhoods are going to get hit hardest in advance, and they do, why aren't political leaders doing more to protect them, right? But scientifically, it was not very interesting, right? Because it's like, if I asked 100 people on the streets of Chicago which neighborhoods are going to be hit hardest in a heat wave, every single person would name the neighborhoods that got hit hardest, right? So scientifically, it wasn't very interesting. But then something happened that really changed my career, and it's that I looked a little bit more closely at the maps, and I saw something that no one else had seen. And what I saw is that, bless you, by the way, and just if in case anyone's listening, I really mean that. So I noticed that there were these neighborhoods that were separated by a street, and they were demographically pretty much identical within this cluster of the south and west sides. And there was this really fascinating thing that I noticed, which is that you would have pairs of neighborhoods that were almost identical, and they had like completely different experiences and outcomes during the heat wave, right? and I wanted to understand why. So like, imagine in this room we got two different neighborhood sets. Call this neighborhood Auburn Gresham over here, and we'll call this neighborhood on the left Englewood, and this is a street going through, and literally these two neighborhoods are separated by the street, okay? And you go over to Auburn Gresham here, and it's like 99% black, very poor, but I don't know if you can see this, but one of the things you notice about Auburn Gresham is it's actually very densely populated over there. Like there's the seats are intact, you know, people are pretty close to each other. You might not be able to see this from where you're sitting over there, but there's like some pretty nice playgrounds over there. There's some corner shops, there's community organizations, church. There's stoops outside of people's apartments and like the little stairs. And at the end of the day, everybody kind of, especially when it's warm weather, people just sit outside on the stoop, you talk to each other, you wave hello. People are not all best friends with each other over there. It's just an ordinary place. But we know who's where, and there's a public life. And you know what happened, why do people die in a heat wave? You don't really die of the heat, you die of isolation. You die of social isolation. And what's so painful about a heat death is that it's very, very easy to prevent, right? If someone sees you and knows that you're suffering and struggling, it's not like you got COVID and you got to figure out like how to keep them alive, right? It's like you put them in a bathtub, get them exposed to air conditioning. If you're early enough, it's very easy to prevent heat deaths. So what happened in Auburn Gresham would be like Perry over here. Perry's like 80 years old, and every day Perry sits on his stoop. And I'm young and handsome, obviously, and you know, I've walked the streets all the time, and I don't really know Perry, but I see him out there, and we nod. I note his presence, and now it's like 106 degrees. Remember what that feels like? 106 degrees, and with the humidity, it feels like 126. And I'm walking by Perry's place, and Perry's not there. What do I do? What would you do? You knock on the door. And it's not like I knock on the door because Perry and I are drinking buddies, or he's my uncle. It's weird that Perry's not out there. I knock on the door, I see Perry. I get Perry to a safe place, you know. Auburn Gresham, despite the fact that it's like right in the heart of where so many people are dying in Chicago, this cluster of death, Auburn Gresham is one of the safest places you can be in Chicago. The death rate in the heat wave is lower than it is in the most affluent neighborhoods on the north side. All right? Now, across the street, we go over to Englewood. Demographically very similar, right? So what's driving the difference here can't be race, it can't be poverty, it can't be the composition of age. You go into Englewood, and again, people in Auburn Gresham, I don't know if you can see this over here, but for reasons I could go into, but I won't here now, there's a lot of empty space over there. You know, you see that there's like empty lots over there. You see like the abandoned buildings, and the empty lots are not in good shape. Like, you know, a lot of like weeds and detritus, and there's nowhere that you can really even go shopping over here. If you're in this neighborhood, you want to shop, you got to get in your car and go somewhere else. The playgrounds are in terrible shape. People don't really sit on the stoop very much. And so you got the same culture, you got the same ethnic background, everything's the same, but over here, you have what I've come to think of as a really depleted social infrastructure, right? And the consequence is people aren't noticing when their neighbors are not there because they're not used to that kind of face-to-face thing. It's not that the people over here don't care about each other. They care about each other just as much as you all do over here. You're not better people. Don't get smug, Auburn Gresham. The physical environment of the neighborhood discourages interaction. it encourages you to kind of hunker down at home. And that's what people did. In a lot of places in Englewood, people were nailing shut their windows, protect themselves. And in the heat wave, they baked. Death rate in Englewood 10 times higher than the death rate in Auburn Gresham, just from the heat wave. But the really amazing thing, which I didn't even realize till after I finished the proper study, is that the life expectancy in Englewood, 5 years lower. So think about that. We got two, by the way, I'm very sorry to all of you who chose to sit on this side of the room today. Okay? It's got ice cream for everybody. Salt ice cream for everybody at the end of the talk. So what's the difference between these two places? It's not race, it's not poverty, it's not culture, not all the stuff we look at. We know what the difference is: social infrastructure. Right? It's social infrastructure. But I'm guessing, I could be wrong about this, but I'm guessing that when you all have your meetings and think about what is the big ingredient, what's the thing we have to really push in our cities and communities to make sure that people feel happier, that people have stronger connections, that they feel some sense of attachment to place, that they're better able to protect each other, right? They feel invested in the community. They feel like they belong. I'm guessing that social infrastructure might not be the top of your list. Could be wrong. I'm guessing you're like, could we come up with a tax break and see if we can get one of those 4-star stores here? But what I want to persuade you of is that this thing called social infrastructure could make a tremendous difference. In my book, I write about a bunch of different kinds of social infrastructure: parks and playgrounds and athletic fields. I'm a soccer dad. It's true that churches, synagogues, mosques, they can be part of the social infrastructure too, as can a good diner or pub like that. I'm guessing the beer houses in Bend are a special part of the social infrastructure. I tend to be more concerned about the public places because that's what we can really shape with our politics. In our governments, that's what we can have the biggest impact on. And the place I wind up writing about quite a lot is the branch library. And for me, I think the branch library is an amazing accomplishment because I told you a little bit about the physical characteristics of a branch library that Carnegie built, but just the whole idea of the library is kind of an amazing idea, right? And I think Americans don't appreciate how unusual our library system is, like just how extraordinary a set of places we have and kind of what they do and what they represent. And actually, a big reason I did this book is that during the year do you remember the election in 2016? Did you have that here? Did you get the election? Yeah, so remember that election in 2016? The thing about that year, I know that this is like a mixed state, there's the purple state, so please do the right thing. But nobody was happy in 2016, right? I mean, and obviously after November 8th, half the people, or maybe a few million less than half the people were really happy, and then other people were really unhappy. But it was a very stressful and horrible time. Do you remember that year? It felt horrible. Did you all feel that's the weird thing about America right now is like when we talk about politics, kind of no matter what side you're on, you think everything's about to fall apart, And 2016 was a rough time for me. I was feeling very nervous about the future of America, and I realized that the thing that made me feel the best, like the most hopeful, that we still have a chance, was when I would walk into a branch library in New York City, and I would kind of see all the stuff that happens in libraries. And just around that time, there was an economist who wrote an article in Forbes magazine. And he wrote, I'd like to see the benefit cost analysis that cashes out the value of the library. He wrote that, and he said, until I see the numbers that justify it, I propose that we knock down libraries across the country. And I'm actually not making up what I'm about to tell you. He said, the library is obsolete unless they can be proven to have cash value. We should knock them down and replace them with Amazon stores. Yeah, I'm not kidding. And I was like, first I thought like friends of mine were trolling me on the internet. They're just like, because they knew I was really getting into libraries. But then it turned out to be a real thing. And I was so upset. But then this incredible thing happened, which is that the librarians of the world united, and they got on Twitter, and they started like writing about all the things that happen in libraries. Like some of us still think of a library as a place with books, you know. But I'll tell you, you're all city people, so maybe you know this, but libraries do more English as a second language instruction than any other public institution. They do more job training for people who are coming out of the criminal justice system, and we have a lot of them because of the way we do business here in this country. They do job training for everyone. They provide computer literacy. They do social programming and civic programming for older population. They obviously do literacy for young adults, right, and for children. They do after school for middle school and high school students, right? They provide internet access. Down on the Lower East Side, about half the households don't have home internet access. They don't have Wi-Fi at home, right? And librarians on Twitter were like, it's like one after the next was pointing out all the amazing things that libraries do. It was incredible. It was like really inspiring. Library Twitter, like just don't mess with library Twitter, people, is the message. It's really what I'm here to tell you tonight. So this incredible thing happened. Like 2 days later, Forbes took the article down. They took it off the internet. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, you can clap. You can clap. Yeah, I've come to think of this as the only good thing that's ever happened on Twitter. So it was an amazing moment, and I got really excited. I was like, wow, you know, Twitter shouted down this guy, like the whole idea, replacing libraries with Amazon, nobody wants that. And I was really excited, and then I had this like revelation that kind of like shook me up again, and I'm trying to think of the best way to convey this to you. I've just got a few more minutes. Does anybody mind if we do a quick social experiment? Would you mind a social experiment? Are you up for it? You do it? You do it? I mean, it's going to be super banal. It's more like a thought experiment, okay? It's a thought experiment. You're all going to be safe, okay? You willing to do this with me? See, we've come a long way together, right? At the beginning, people were like, I don't know, who signed this guy up? Okay. I want you to do this. Imagine for a moment that there's no such thing as the library. Jesus. I've done this before and nobody's ever responded that way. So it's like, okay. By the way, if you feel like you can't control that, there's a place across the street called Fire, F-Y-R-E. And when I got here yesterday, I was very hungry, and I thought it was a barbecue. It's not a barbecue, and if you're feeling like you just want to chill out a little bit, you can go to Fire. So, okay, imagine there's no such thing as a library. And, right, there's no such thing. And I come here from New York, and I pitch this idea to you. Pitch the library. Doesn't exist. And you're all really excited about it. We're like, oh, this is a great idea. And we're like the Oregon League of Cities. We've got clout. We've got political people here. And we decide we're going to go to the governor's office, and we are going to make a pitch. Okay? So it's like we cancel the reception after this. We load into buses. How far are we from the Capitol? 4 hours? Okay, never mind. Forget it. No, okay, we're gonna do it. Okay, we're gonna load into buses. We're gonna go to the Capitol, and we're gonna go to the governor. And here's our pitch to the governor. Okay, you ready for the pitch we're gonna make? Okay, Governor. We've come up with this amazing idea for a thing we'd like to call the library. And the notion is we would like to put a public building in every neighborhood of every city in Oregon, and we want to have one in every suburb, and we want to have one in every small town. And in Portland, we're going to have like a really big and cool one, you know, and in Bend, there's going to be one that's got like big wooden roof and glass. It's going to feel really airy and amazing. It's going to the libraries are going to fit every community, and like they're from grand to small, but there's going to be a library every place. And Governor, this is what we're going to do. We're going to open up those libraries 7 days a week, morning to night, and we're going to staff them with these public employees we call librarians, and their job is that when people walk in, they're going to say, "How can I help you?" and not judge. These libraries are going to be open to everybody, regardless of their age, their race, their social class, their ethnicity, their citizenship status. They don't even have to be citizens to come into the library and use it. Okay? People can stay as long as they like. Let's fill the libraries up with all of our cultural heritage, right? Our books, periodicals, newspapers, movies. We'll have like crafts material. People can come and like make stuff together. We'll have computers. We'll have tablets, music. People can take whatever they want and bring them home. And to make sure that they bring it back, we're going to use the honor system. Now, Governor, all of these things should be free for anybody who wants to use it. I mean, we'll pay for it in taxes, but when you go in there, everything's going to be free. Okay? And we think if we did this, you know, it'd be really good for the state, good for communities, good for cities. All right. Look around the room a little bit. This is the experiment part. Never know what's going to happen here. I want you to raise your hand very, very high if you think if we went to the current governor of Oregon today and the library did not exist, there was no such thing as a library, and we pitched that idea. Raise your hand as high as you can if you think the governor would be like, yes, that's an amazing idea. Let's get it done right now. Raise your hand as high as you can. Wow, that's the most people who've ever raised their hand. It's about slightly, I'd say it's slightly under 10% of you. Usually people just laugh when I say that. Usually people just laugh. I bless you for your hopefulness. You 10%. I don't know anything about Oregon politics except for it's going to be a nutty election in November. But I personally don't believe that any governor of any state in this country right now, if the library did not exist, I don't think if we pitch that idea, we're going to build a building in every city, every neighborhood, giant building in the main cities, everything's free, open to everyone. I don't see anybody saying yes, and 90-some% of you agree with me. And the reason we don't think that that would happen is because that idea of the library and what it represents, that idea is antithetical to the model of development that reigns in this country and in this world right now. Right? The idea comes from an idea that there are these things in the world called public goods, and that the way you build a decent city and a decent community and a decent society is you invest in public goods so there's a very high baseline for everyone who lives in a place. Everyone feels like they have an opportunity. Everyone feels like they belong. Everyone feels like their lives are dignified. And now we do it a little differently, and we've been doing it differently for decades, right? We say that the best way to do it is to build up the market, and the benefits will trickle down, right? That's kind of where we are. And I'm not against markets, but this public goods thing, we kind of lost sight of it. Here's the really wild thing that I want us all to contemplate before I run. I got a couple hours to get some prayers in, and I feel like I still got a shot. I got a shot at this thing. Okay? Someone should check up on me next year at Yom Kippur, by the way, because if I'm not in the Book of Life, I'm blaming Bend, Oregon. Okay? It's not the Deschutes Brewery. So here's the mind-bending thing about this whole situation. That proposal that 90-some% of people in this room think would never get by with the current governor, that proposal, we don't need to make it, because that idea that's so unbelievably radical for this moment, we already have it, right? We did it. There is actually a library in every neighborhood, in every city. There is actually a library in every city and town and suburb. It exists. And I think the question that we need to be asking is why? How do we do that? How is it that we built cities in this country that are full of places like libraries and parks and playgrounds and public schools? What was the idea that made us think we're going to be better off here if we provide this to each other and to everyone? And where did we let it go? In my darker moments, I feel a little bit like we're these prodigal children who have inherited something extraordinary that we've kind of taken as our birthright. We take it for granted. And our job, I think our moral responsibility, and we're born into something that's great and generous and gives to us, is to spend part of our lives thinking about how we make sure that it's there for our children and for their children and the children who come after them. Right? They deserve better. We know more. We have more wealth. They did not have $12 ice cream cones when we were kids. The truth is we have incredible wealth right now. There are palaces everywhere. Just drive around Bend, let alone Portland or Seattle or New York City where I live. We got palaces. You won't believe the palaces we have. But we've created a world where some people have those palaces. Some people have a Roomba and a talking Chewbacca doll, right? But we've kind of forgotten about the palaces for the people. We've kind of forgotten how important it is to build things that everybody can feel is theirs. We've forgotten about building places where everyone feels like they belong, where they know when they walk in the door they're going to be dignified, shown some respect regardless of who they are, how much money they have in the bank, right? Whether or not they're going to supersize it. The places we build reflect who we are, what we value, what we want for ourselves in our personal lives and our public life. I came all this way to say, collectively, I think we've lost sight of something really important, something that was once essential for making this country a decent place. And I think we got a ways to go. We got a lot of work to do. It's not like if you build a library and a playground, we solve all our problems. It's not the solution to what's wrong with America right now, but if we want to start creating a solution, if we want to make things better, I can't think of any better place to begin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for sharing your vision, your insight with our cities this afternoon, and a special thanks to McDonald Miller Facility Solutions for sponsoring the keynote. A couple of announcements. I would like to join you, I would like you to join me, because I will be there, for our annual reception. This is our traditional networking event to start the LOC conference. It's a great opportunity to visit with your fellow city officials, enjoy some appetizers and beverages, and visit with representatives of our co-sponsors this year at the welcome reception, and that will be Comcast and Amoresco. So the welcome reception will be getting underway shortly. It will be in Cascade Room B. Please, please, please bring your badge. You must wear it to get in to attend. The reception, they will be scanning your badge at the door as you enter the room. So please know that it'll start about 6:30, and then we invite you to venture downtown and enjoy food afterwards, after that welcome reception. 6:30. Okay, well, that's not what my notes say. I'm just reading what was written in my book. Okay, so 4:45, that way. Tomorrow we will begin things at 7 a.m., right? All right. If not, we'll let you know. If you haven't had a chance, please download the app. It's super fun. It will probably have all of the right times and information if I point you in the wrong direction. And there's a lot of interaction that's happening there as well. I'm going off script because it's wrong. Anyways, tomorrow, 7 a.m., breakfast with the trade show, followed by our DEI workshop and our small, medium, and large city networking session at 8 a.m. Then at 9:15, we will have our first set of tours and breakout sessions. It's going to be full of lots and lots of fun. And then the conference will finish with the awards dinner starting at 5:30. And if you haven't already, please be sure to download the app. Thank you. And I can't wait to see you at the reception at 4:45 next door. Thank you.